Hello and welcome to More Talks. I am WC Moore. This is Biden talking about his Build Back Better policy.
I'm here today to talk about what's fundamentally at stake right now, in my view, for the families, not only of Connecticut, because you're ahead of the curve in some of what you've done on your own, but for our country. For a long time, America set the pace across the globe. For most of the 21st century, we literally led the world by a significant margin in the investments we invested in our own people, in our people. Not only our roads, our highways, our bridges, but on our people and on our families.
You also didn't have as many government programs wasting a lot of this money that could be going on stuff like that.
And we didn't just build the interstate highway system and invest to win the space race. We also were among the first to provide access to free education.
No, the interstate highway came from Hitler's idea, and Eisenhower brought it to the U.S., and he had to fight tooth and nail for it.
Beginning back at the turn of the 20th century. It was a distinction and a decision to invest in our children and our families, and it's a major reason why we were able to lead the world in the 21st century. One of the few nations in the world had universal education for everyone, beginning at what was then first grade. But somehow along the way, we sort of stopped investing in our people. Our infrastructure has fallen from the best in the world. According to the World Economic Forum, our infrastructure ranks 13th in the world. Roads, bridges, a whole range of things.
It's because of the way budgets are done. If they don't spend a budget, then they don't get the same amount next year. So they have to make stuff up to do, and then when something does break, they can't afford to fix it because they spend that money.
But just as important as the Organization of Economic Opportunity and Cooperation now ranks America 35 out of 37 major countries when it comes to investing in early childhood education and care. Say another way, the world's catching up and beginning to pass us. Jill has, my community college, Dr. Biden has an expression she's used for real. Any country that educates us will outcompete us. Any country that educates us will outcompete us.
Yet in places like Oregon, you don't need to be able to read and write now or do math to graduate high school. So, I mean, the states are bringing the education level down. You need to talk to the governor of Oregon and say, this is stupid. Change it back to how it should be.
We cannot be competitive in the 21st century in this global economy if we fail to invest. That's why I propose two critical pieces of legislation being debated in Washington right now. They're both bills. They're not about left versus right. They're not about moderate versus progressive.
But how much are they? That's what it comes down to. You've spent way too much money. You need to make some budget cuts first before you can afford to even think about spending money.
Or anything else that pits one American against another. These
By you, I don't mean the Biden administration. I mean the government in general for the last 50 years.
bills, in my view, are literally about competitiveness versus complacency, about opportunity versus decay, about leading the world or continue to let the world move by us.
And do these include school vouchers? Because the Democratic Party have been against school vouchers, and school vouchers are a great idea. You have the money for your kid, and you can take them to any school you want. And so the schools have to improve or they'll die.
Folks, a lot of folks know what's at stake in the infrastructure bill. It's about rebuilding the arteries of our economy, putting people to work in good paying jobs. The estimates from Wall Street would create up to 16 million new jobs over time. Good paying jobs, union jobs. Not
Unions are not a good idea. You want unions because unions generally bow down to the Democratic Party. Bad idea to have a one party system. That is the beginning of communism.
not $5 an hour, 7, 15, but 40, $50 an hour, prevailing wage. You can raise a family on. You can live with some dignity and pride. Bringing our roads and bridges up to speed, replacing lead water pipes. There's over 40,000 schools across America where you got to be worried when you go to the water fountain, whether there's lead in the water and the children are being poisoned. You can turn
Well, why the hell is the water fountain in? If that is honestly true, then those water fountains should be shut off.
Turn on the faucet so that every place in America, but you're sure the water is clean and able to be drunk.
And what about Flint, Michigan? Flint, Michigan has had poisonous, literally poisonous water, and that is all run by Democrats, and that is not being fixed. And I'm not blaming you here, but it's run by your party. Your party say you care, and it is not being fixed.
Laying transmission lines for a modern and resilient energy grid. Making high-speed internet affordable and available everywhere in America, from urban, suburban, rural. There's parts of the country that are just being left behind.
If people live out in the country, they know what to expect. So, I mean, that's up to them.
And there are parts of the country in states that are economically prosperous that are being left behind. Meeting the moment on the climate crisis, and in the process creating millions of good-paying jobs.
But again, you're going all the wrong way with the climate crisis. You insist on solar and wind, and that helps a little bit, but nuclear is the way forward. Nuclear is the cleanest.
You know, I've had a couple conferences already held. I'm going to COP26 in Scotland shortly.
So you're going to fly to Glasgow, Scotland, on a plane, burning up fuel to argue about using less fuel. Smart move.
And what I guess I had 71 heads of state on the first one I did in the White House. And I said, and people are starting to talk about it now, not about me, about the idea. When I think climate, I think jobs, good paying jobs, union jobs. This is an opportunity.
It seems it's an opportunity for you and your party to add more union jobs by the sounds of it. You don't actually think it's an opportunity for America.
We're the only country in the world that has consistently turned difficulty into opportunity. We have a chance to
That's a lie. Every country turns difficulty into opportunity.
not only make this world more livable, but to actually create greater opportunity for people. Making landmark investments in public transit and rail, and increasing efficiency, reducing emissions. You know, there's millions of kids getting on diesel school buses, and inhaling the air, getting asthma. They should be.
That has been, you've had diesel school buses for generations, and only now they're getting asthma. There must be another reason.
Electric buses. Electric buses. What's going to happen? So
Okay, so electric buses run on batteries. Batteries get charged up by the electricity, and electricity is run off a coal oil power grid. It's making no difference unless you went nuclear.
look, I'm going to have a tendency to say more than I need to say because you all understand it. But the bottom line is I wanted to come here today because too many folks in Washington still don't realize it isn't enough just to invest in our physical infrastructure. We also have to invest in our people. And that's what the second bill does, the Build Back Better initiative. Seeing
Please explain Build Back Better.
children and educators here at this center is a perfect reminder what our families need for and our economy needs so badly to be able to thrive. You know, you all know the statistics, particularly the teachers here. A child coming out of a single parent house where there's real difficulty will hear literally a million fewer words spoken, not different words, spoken, than the child coming out of a middle class household.
Why are you assuming that single parent families are lower class? Is that because statistics say that single payer family or single parent families are lower class? Yet the government incentivizes single families. So I mean, start by incentivizing marriage. If you start incentivizing marriage, then more kids will be in two-parent families, and that solves this issue.
And so no matter what you say, you start them at the same age, at age 6 or 7, 5 or 6 in school, they're already behind the curve, already behind the curve. How can we compete in a world of millions of Americans' parents, especially moms, can't be part of the workforce? because they can't afford the cost of child care or elder care, I might add. Elder care. They're the sandwich generation getting crushed. Here in Connecticut, the average annual cost to bring your toddler to a quality child care center is about $16,000 a year. That's what it is around the country. Some places more, some places a little less. A lot of money. It's $16,000 after taxes, after you pay your taxes. So
Well, make our taxes less then. You can do that.
the average two-parent family with two young kids spends 26% of their income on child care every year. My Build Back Better plan is going to change that. It's going to cut the cost of child care for most Connecticut families literally in half.
How is it going to cut the cost? Are you going to make the childcare people take less money, which means you're cutting their wages? Or are the government going to pay the money, which means you're taking money from everybody in the country? Because that's where the government gets their money from, in theory, is from taxation. So which means my taxes are going to go up. They have to go up because you've spent more than we already give already.
No middle-class family will pay more than 7% of their income on child care. None, period. And that's going
What about lower class family? You're just talking about middle class here.
to help parents get back into the workforce and make ends meet. Or maybe care for that. We have to do the same. I'm not going to talk about it today, but the other piece of it you all know, it deals with elder care. You got 80,000 people waiting to qualify under Medicaid, and there's no spaces. We can afford to do this. But at any rate, we also have to provide businesses with tax credits to build on-site care facilities. Look, you in the legislature were way ahead of the curve. You decided that for people working in the legislature, there should be a place for their children. Well, you know, what we want to do is make sure that we encourage businesses to do the same, to get a significant tax cut, to be able, if they have an on-site facility, to take.
But if other people do tax cuts, you call them evil. But now, I mean, I agree with this tax cut idea. That's a great idea. But don't challenge other people for arguing for tax cuts.
Care of their workers' children when they show up. So you go to work with your child, and you have a serious facility on site. Well, studies show that when you have on-site care for a children's center, the business itself, have less employee turnover, less absenteeism, and higher productivity. We can show you all those studies. It's real. We can't afford to lag behind other countries when they're investing. When America made 12 years of public education universal more than a century ago, it gave the best educated, best prepared workforce in the world to the rest of the world. But if we're designing public education today, all of a sudden we had none, we said, okay, what are we going to do? We need free public education. Does anybody think we'd think 12 years was enough in the second quarter of the 21st century? The fact is today only about
How long do you want to indoctrinate our kids for?
half of 3 and 4-year-olds in America are enrolled in early education, childhood education, like you're doing here. In Germany, France, and the UK, even Latvia, the number of children in those countries enrolled is 90%.
But in England, you stay in school till you're 16, not 18. So they go a little earlier, but they leave a little earlier. So what's the difference?
90%. My plan gets us back on track. Provides 2 years of high quality preschool for every child in America.
You also need to tell people everything and not hide bits. As I said, in America they stay in school till they're 18. In the UK they stay in school till they're 16. So yes, it's 2 years after, but then or 2 years before, but then you've got 2 years after.
It also makes investments in higher education by increasing Pell Grants. I don't know if I can get it done, but I also have proposed this free community college, like you've done here in the state of Connecticut, to help students from lower income families attend community college.
That should be a state thing, though. Most of this should be a state thing. Federal government should stay out of it.
4-year schools. And invest in historically black colleges, universities to make sure young people from every
Why just invest in historically black colleges and universities? That is racist.
neighborhood have a shot at good paying jobs in the future. We also extend this lady's child tax credit, which is finally a tax cut for the middle class. Now look,
Bush and Trump did tax cuts for everybody, which is also a tax cut for the middle class. But when I think it was when Bush did it, the Democrats argued, well, it's only $60 a month. Well, that's $60 a month more than they had.
my friends on the other side never had any problem providing $2 trillion in tax cuts for the very wealthy.
That may have been Trump, but I think Trump did it for everybody. But I know Bush did it for everybody. So don't say my friends on the other side. Name who you mean. And you're just whining about Trump every speech you do.
Look, I don't think you shouldn't be able to make $1 million or $1 billion. I'm a capitalist, but guess what? I'm also listed for 36 years as the poorest man in the Congress.
Well, you must hide your money well if you're the poorest man in the Congress. And you don't care how much people make, but you agreed with Obama when he said at a certain point you've made too much.
But I make big money now. I'm a president. But all kidding aside, I don't think we should punish anybody, but just pay your fair share.
Define fair share. If the poor people are paying 10%, then the rich people should pay 10%. That's their fair share. It's the same share as everybody else.
Just pay your fair share.
Not just that, but the poor people generally get money back at the tax money back at the end of the year. Rich people don't. But also, you've got where the top 1% of the people pay about 90% of the taxes in the US. How much is their fair share?
You know, the issue that has been championed by Rosa for years, in the past, if you paid your taxes and had an income high enough that you were able to take the $2,000 per child deduction, you could actually write it off your taxes. But how many families do you know of cops and firefighters and school teachers and what that don't pay that much in tax because they pay tax, but there's nothing. You say you're going to get 4,000 back for your kids. Well, you know it's not refundable. Either it comes off your tax bill or you don't get it at all. The American Rescue Plan, which these folks voted for as well, and I'm very proud of it, it's a real game changer. It started our economy moving again.
That confuses me what he was saying about taxes there. But I mean, a lot of these people who don't earn that much get money back at the end of the year, get the taxes back. When I was in the lowest bracket, I would pay about 8,000 taxes a year and get 12,000 back. So, I mean, this is the lowest people. Now I'm earning a bit more, I don't get as much back.
Recognize that people with lower incomes don't get the benefit of that tax break because they don't have that much to deduct. So we make it refundable, make it permanently refundable. So you get that back over the years. You get if you only had $1,000 in taxes and you had 3 kids, you'd end up in a situation where you get $5,000 refundable to you. They would pay you. The government would pay you. And we increased that amount in the near term to $3,600 for every child under the age of 6 and $3,000 for dependents between the ages of 6 and 17. The money's already a game changer for working families. It's projected to cut child poverty in Connecticut, well, one of the wealthier states like Delaware, in Connecticut, by 40%.
All the things from FDR down that is meant to raise poverty and all this, it hasn't worked. People are no better off than they would have been without these benefits, and the government have wasted trillions of dollars since then. So who's to say that this? And I realize that's your intention, and intentions are good, but if it's not going to result in it, then it's a waste of government money.
If we don't pass the bill, I mean, it's real. It's a life changer. The Build Back Better Act says that you get the first half of it paid to you, and then the second half you get paid on a monthly basis. People are getting hard-working families are getting a check in the mail on the 15th. Today's the 15th, isn't it? Or their bank account, just like you get your Social Security check. But it's for your children. It's for being able to raise your kids. That monthly tax cut for parents is going to end in just a couple months. It's going to impact families of 61 million kids right at the holidays when the winter heating costs are going up. When we need to keep the taxes for families going down. The bottom line is this. When you give working families a break, we're not just raising their quality of life, we're positioning our country to compete in the future. You know, when I talk to all your folks out in the playground, as I joked, and said, everybody knows I like kids better than people. Fortunately, they're like me. That's why maybe I like them. But all kidding aside, you all talked about it. You all talked about what it means to the
You like kids better than people? Are kids not people, just slightly smaller?
families that these children. And granted, you had to cut way back, and because of a lot of things happening, things aren't the same as they were. But these bills are about strengthening the economy for decades to come. Both of these bills spend out over 10 years. Take the infrastructure bill. All those investments in roads, bridges, highways, high-speed internet, water, clean water, everything that represent less than 0.5% of our economy each year if you add it all up over these years. And the cost of the Build Back Better bill in terms of adding to the deficit is zero. So when I hear people say it costs 3.5 trillion,
Please explain how it's zero. Show us your math so we can think about believing you.
and be honest with you, we're probably not going to get 3.5 trillion this year. We're going to get something less than that. But I'm going to negotiate it. I'm going to get it done with the grace of God and the goodwill of neighbors and the creek not rise, as my grandpa would say. but all kidding aside, we're going to keep coming. And because the more we demonstrate it works, the more we can do. It's paid for because big corporations and the very wealthy ought to start paying their fair share. Let me be clear. Nobody, since I got elected, and when I was campaigning, nobody who makes under $400,000 a year, which is a lot of money, will see their taxes go up one single penny. Nobody. Not one.
What about this inflation? This inflation is basically a tax, and this inflation is caused by you.
That's why in the highway bill I didn't add gas tax. So I keep that commitment. In fact, this plan cuts taxes for working people. There's no reason why, as I said, billionaires should pay a lower tax rate, literally a lower tax rate, than a school teacher and a firefighter.
Why don't you just have a flat tax? Forget all these extra things. Forget about people getting money back. Just have a flat tax. Everybody pay 10% of their taxes. That's it. I would pay $7,000, and Bill Gates would pay 10 million. Everybody pays the same percentage.
A couple. So that's what's happening now. It isn't right that 55 of our Fortune 400 companies, the largest companies in America, last year, 55 of the Fortune 500 paid zero in taxes.
Make it remind you the Fortune 400 and Fortune 500. Is that 0% the owner paid or 0% in corporate taxes? Because I can't see that they did not pay any tax at all. Again, show me the proof.
And they made $40 billion in profit. I'm glad they made a profit.
Well, that means this government is breaking the new rule set by all the 127 countries in the world if it stays like that, because you've just agreed on a minimum corporate tax of 15%.
People employ, I mean that sincerely. But pay your fair share. Just
Why don't you?
pay a decent portion of what we lay out in this piece of legislation. And by the way, I've had a number of Fortune 500 companies come to me and say, you're right, we can pay a higher tax than we're paying now.
Really, which company honestly does that? Unless they want money from the government. Which company honestly says, yeah, charge me more money. I don't mind. Just like Facebook recently, yeah, regulate us. Nobody wants that unless they know they're going to get something out of it from the government.
Because they understand the impact if we don't invest like we have to on their long-term health and well-being. This needs to change. Working folks understand it. That's why, despite the attacks and misinformation, my plan still has the overwhelming support of the American people when they're told what's in it. They understand that when
Do you tell them everything that's in it? including giving money to journalists, or do you just tell them the little bits that you want them to know that's in it?
Families have a little more breathing room. America has a lot better shot. My dad used to say, for real, my dad was a well-read, well-bred man who was regretted his whole life he never got a chance to go to college. And he worked like heck. He'd always come home for dinner and then go back to work. And I remember we lived in a four-bedroom split-level home with 4 kids and a grandpa. And and you know, my bed was against the wall where my parents' bed was against the adjacent wall. I remember one night, I could tell my dad was just so restless. I was in high school. The next morning, I asked my mom, I said, "What's the matter with Dad, Mom?" She said, "Well, honey, his company just told him I was going to do away with health insurance. No health insurance." Well, you know what? My dad's not, we weren't poor. My dad made probably on average in those days $25,000 a year, which is a decent salary. But he used to say, everybody's entitled to just a little bit of breathing room. Just a little bit. A little bit of breathing room. I've never seen a time, and some of you may have, beyond my colleagues in the Congress, the press may have your master's or doctorate degrees in economics. Name me a single time in American history when the middle class was doing well that the wealthy didn't do very, very well. Name me a time. One single time in American history. So we're not hurting anybody. We're just making sure everybody gets a shot. Let me close with this. And this is not hyperbole. The world is watching. Autocrats
The world are watching a lot less since you got in because you've turned a lot of people against the US.
believe that the world is moving so rapidly that democracies cannot generate consensus quickly enough to get things done. Not a joke. I've had hours and hours and hours of meetings and personal conversations with Xi Jinping. I spent more time with him, I believe, than any other world leader has.
Yeah, you've probably been given more money from him than any other world leader has either, as well.
When I was vice president, and now on the phone. Every time he calls or we talk on it, it's a conversation between an hour and a half and 2.5 hours. Not a joke. My word.
Yeah, but your word is worth so much.
But he doesn't think democracies can compete because they can't react quickly enough.
Is that why you want to turn to communism?
In my summit with Putin, Switzerland, they're betting democracies can't compete. We can't move quickly enough. I'm heading to the G20. Came back from the G7.
But speed is dangerous. With speed, you make mistakes.
You know how they measure? They don't measure us based on the size of our military. They don't measure us on how much power we have that way. They want to know, can we get anything done?
Yes, things can get done, but they get done slowly and methodically and correctly.
Not a joke. And many of you travel internationally. Can we get anything done? Can you put anything together to get something done in America? So folks, they're betting that we won't respond to this inflection point in history. But I've always said, and I mean, if some of you guys who work with me know this, I've said it 1,000 times, it's never a good bet to bet against the American people. Never a good bet. So it's time for us to invest in ourselves. Show the world that American democracy works.
It is not a democracy. It's a democratic constitutional republic.
We've always led the world not by the example of our physical power, but by the power of our example. That's why the world has followed. And given us that half a chance, there's not a single solitary thing that we can't achieve.
That's a nice ending. I just wish you believed it, but that's a nice ending.
If we do it together. So I'm hopeful. There's a lot of questions the press is going to want to ask me, I know, about how are the negotiations going and how we're going to get this done and so on. Well, I told you before what my neurosurgeon years ago said when I had that aneurysm. He said, your problem, and I was then a senator, your problem, Senator, is you're a congenital optimist. But I'm convinced we're going to get this done. I'm convinced we're going to get it done. We're not going to get $3.5 trillion. We'll get less than that, but we're going to get it. And we're going to come back and get the rest.
So you're expecting to get everything because you know once it's implemented, then it's almost impossible for it to get taken away again. I mean, you are being disingenuous. You need to be honest with people, and people will respond to honesty.
So I want to thank you all, and God bless you.
There again, saying we're going to come back and get it done is being honest. But you know what I mean. You need to be honest from the beginning and less disingenuous.
I know you're asking about President Clinton. I've been exchanging calls. He seems to be, God willing, doing well. And so when I talk to him, I'll let you all know. But in the meantime, thank you for taking the time to be here.